Bismillah Rahman Rahim. My friend Chairman PTA, General Hafizur Rahman, His Excellency Fahd Suleiman, the Ambassador of Oman, dignitaries and friends. It really is a privilege to be here today and to be amongst a whole sector that we've been silently working for but didn't have enough results to be able to show. So I wanted to be part of this once we have something tangible to share. And Anwar Kabir and everyone else timed it perfectly. This is a sector, this is an industry that is very important for Pakistan's economy and the challenges that it faces. The telecom sector in Pakistan is 191 mobile subscribers. Now you can be excused for thinking that this is a country that's too small for big international players to come and grow. But 191 million cellular subscribers is the 7th largest market in the world. Just the number of broadband users in Pakistan is more than the entire population of Canada. Just the number of social media users in Pakistan is more than the entire population of many countries in Europe. This is not a small market. This is a country with huge potential. And Ali Nasir, I don't know whether he's still here or has left, I really liked his speech because he said we can do better. Of course we can do better. You look at a country of the scale of Pakistan, mostly young people, educated, urbanized. You look at the adoption of technology in Pakistan. You look at our exports, they don't line up. We only export, what, $32 billion worth of goods and services. We could be doing a lot more in this country. And this could be the beginning of that. Many years ago, I took a short course at Harvard, and as part of their case study, they presented Pakistan as a country which has a lot of potential in manufacturing, but has not been able to progress as well as it should based on this potential. Our industry, almost cottage industry in fan manufacturing, out of a whole belt in Gujranwala, Gujarat, etc., has not been able to progress to a point that they've become an export-oriented industry. We used to be a very large producer of medical equipment. That has eroded over the years. Our textile has not grown as much as we could. And we have totally untapped potential of the electronics industry. There is very little electronics that gets manufactured in this country. It's not just electronics, also products like fiber optics for the local huge demand, but also export potential. But what has happened is in the last 3 years or so, there's been good work in this sector. There was a very good policy that was brought in for local handset manufacturing. And I've actually written down all the things that we've done for them. And there are things that we promised that we couldn't do, but let me at least start out with the things that we've done for them. The handset manufacturing industry has made so far, from what I can tell, there are various numbers that I got reported this morning, but about 57 million phones that have been locally manufactured. That's a very large number. Considering that our domestic demand is only 25 million phones per year. So a large fraction of the local demand could be met by local handset manufacturers. And these are not just manufacturers with local brands. There are, I'm told, more than 35 international brands that are beginning to either manufacture in Pakistan or explore this market. We certainly want to be able to meet our domestic demand through locally assembled handsets. For this, the government has given a lot of incentives to the industry. Some we've promised and not delivered, but many that have already been put into play. If you're a handset manufacturer in Pakistan, there is a zero regulatory duty for CKDs and SKDs in the country. If you're a handset manufacturer in Pakistan, there's a zero fixed income tax on CKDs and SKDs manufacturing mobile devices of up to $350. If you're in Pakistan, there's a zero fixed sales tax on CKDs and SKDs manufacturing. You're also exempt from the 4% withholding tax on domestic sales. These are all the things that the government thought of about 3 years ago and passed on to local handset manufacturers. And as one of the speakers said, they are now able to meet a very large fraction of the domestic demand. The domestic demand is about 25 million handsets. They produced 16 million handsets in 2021 and about 24 million in 22. So a local handset manufacturing industry can actually meet a very large fraction of the domestic demand. But the real benefit of this industry would come when they would be able to export these phones in a globally competitive market. Currently, the phones that are produced in Pakistan, their average value is about 15,000 rupees. These are 2G and 3G phones used by the masses. So the question is, what can we do to incentivize adoption of high-end phones, production of high-end phones, and export of high-end phones from Pakistan? For this, the government promised but didn't deliver on a 3% R&D allowance. I'm happy to report that they've now agreed finally, officially, that a 3% R&D allowance that we had long promised to the handset manufacturing industry will be given to them before the end of this fiscal year. This 3% would eventually increase to 8%, which would be very comparable to just the regional policies that we have. India exports about $10 billion worth of exports every year. We've just been told that Vietnam exports $60 billion worth of phones. Thailand is a great example for a for electronics manufacturing industry. Many years ago, Thailand started assembling laptops domestically, but also for the regional market. But the government had a great policy for what is called local deletion, which means that you can assemble electronics using SKDs and CKDs, but you must manufacture some of the components in the country. And Thailand did the same for laptops. Now, if you bought a laptop, it could come from anywhere in the world, but you should know that 60% of the hard disks embedded in these laptops are produced by one country, Thailand, just because of a local deletion policy where they encouraged local manufacturers to not just assemble the hardware there, but also specialize in some components which are locally produced now. So therefore, alongside this 3% subsidy for handset manufacturers, going up to inshallah 8% in the next fiscal year, we also need to do two important things. One, local deletion, which means that there is a sunset clause for a few years where some components are manufactured in Pakistan. And two, that we give them a tariff differential, which means that it's expensive to import a high-end phone as opposed to manufacture it locally. So what's going to go into play, inshallah ta'ala, in the next month or so is your 3% R&D allowance that we had long promised you but never gave you, ready to be given out to the handset manufacturers so that they become domestically competitive. The government has finally agreed on a sum of money that they could give the third quarter of this year and then the rest in the fourth quarter. Two, for you to, as part of that deal, also have a local deletion policy with a sunset clause, which means that in the next X number of years, you must be producing some locally manufactured components that go into these smartphones. These are not just CKDs and SKDs that get imported and manufactured here. And three, that we give you some tariff differential so that for the market, it makes more sense to manufacture it locally as opposed to import it. Having said this, the other industry that is equally important for Pakistan but often overlooked is the fiber manufacturing industry. Now, unknown to us in many ways, this industry has also flourished. And wherever I go, to Saudi, to Qatar, anywhere in the Middle East, I meet manufacturers and exporters of manufacturers and exporters of fiber from Pakistan. Now, this industry has made the fiber optic manufacturers 1.34 million kilometers of fiber cable in Pakistan, which is fantastic. And they've exported about 10% of that, which is 130,000. And from what we see, developments regionally, Neom City, Qatar, GCC region, Africa, there's a huge demand for low-cost fiber. And now we have 4 companies that are manufacturing fiber locally. Their capacity of production is about 10,000 kilometers. Now that's also an industry for which we must come up with an R&D allowance. We must come up with some incentive and subsidies through which they can grow and globally compete. And that's an industry that's certainly been on my agenda for a long time now. And inshallah ta'ala, in the next month or so, you would hear our policies to support the fiber optic manufacturing industry in Pakistan. Now, Pakistan is also going through a transition in terms of its telecom landscape. We have 4G in this country, but really beyond the 15, 20 cities, large cities that we go to. There are many reasons for this. One, lack of adequate spectrum for the telecom industry. The entire telecom industry at this point, telecom operators, share 273 megahertz of spectrum. Compare that to a single telecom operator in a country like Australia, for instance, where a single operator has more than 350 megahertz of spectrum. Now, if this commodity was in short supply, I would understand that. But as we speak, the government has 600 megahertz of unutilized spectrum that we must free up and give to the telecom industry. It would almost double their capacity, could also triple their capacity. What we have done in the last 4 months is to make sure that we at least make 300 megahertz of that spectrum available for an auction. This is a technology neutral spectrum, which means starts at 700 megahertz and goes all the way up to 3.5 gigahertz. Of course, there are parts of this spectrum that are very amenable to a 5G rollout. So what we are going to do is 3 things. We have already allocated 300 megahertz now for an auction for the telecom industry. We're going to hopefully, and this is in partnership with the telecom industry, also the regulators, as well as the Ministry of IT, come up with a policy of spectrum auction that doesn't front load it. We don't treat it as an asset that needs to be unlocked in terms of value on day one. If we made that mistake, the telecom operators would largely just be forced to invest in the spectrum to remain competitive, but would not have the money to invest in the infrastructure, handsets, and wider rollout of something like 4G, 5G. So at this point, everyone in the government is aligned that we must take a forward-looking view. We make this 300 megahertz immediately accessible to the telecom industry. Immediately in this case is July, August is the timeline. But once we decide that we are able to auction the spectrum, we make the policy such that the spectrum is not linked to dollars. The money can be spread out over many years, and we keep the payment terms such that while they invest in the spectrum, they also invest in the telecom infrastructure. Otherwise, we'll again find ourselves in a situation where 4G or 5G accessibility would only be limited to large cities because there won't be a business case to spread it beyond that. 2, we have 56,000 cellular towers in Pakistan. We didn't have an infrastructure sharing policy, so every telecom operator was forced to essentially set up their own infrastructure. We have now, with our member telecom leading this initiative with PTA, we now have an infrastructure sharing policy in place, which means that at least infrastructure can be shared across telecom operators, which will lower your cost of doing business. Shortly, we'll also be working on an active spectrum sharing policy, which means that you'll be able to share the radio networks that you use for your subscribers also. That would also help you lower the costs. And 3, we have been working very hard on a national fiberization policy. Of the 56,000 towers that we have in Pakistan, only about 6,000 to 7,000 are fiberized. We have one of the lowest ratios of fiber to home or fiber to curb in Pakistan. Pakistan has at this point 164,000 kilometers of fiber laid out. We need another 200,000. The question is, and it is largely the onus of the government, the question is why are the ISPs not rolling out the fiber? It is, of course, because of poor policy and incentivization that we've failed to put in over several years. So what we've done now is that we now have a national fiberization policy ready with us, where the rates for right-of-way are standardized. The appropriate government is notified, which means that you know who to go to seek permission, whether you are using railways land or NHA's land or you link fiber in Naskri or DHA or any one of these the housing societies or infrastructure that government owns. So there is appropriate government now notified. So there will be one office that you need to go to seek permission. We have standardized and massively reduced the rates for laying fiber. What used to be something like 3.7 million rupees for one-time cost for crossing a railway crossing has come down to 1 million. So about 300% lowering of fees have happened within this policy. So whether you're now crossing a railway crossing, laying your fiber across the railway track, you're laying your fiber in NHA or in Punjab or Sindh or Balochistan or KP, there will be standardized policies, standardized rates across board. And what we want to be able to do is now expand the layout of fiber from 164,000 kilometers, what we currently have, to another 200,000 kilometers. We need to fiberize these towers. We need to make sure that we wean them off of these low bandwidth, dedicated microwave channels. We do an infrastructure sharing, so this microwave connectivity can be shared, but we also give you a low-cost backhaul. That would come from one, incentivizing layout of fiber through national fiberization policy, supporting and incentivizing fiber production in Pakistan, which is already beginning to happen, and finally, to embrace a forward-looking space policy. As you're aware, the world has moved on very quickly from geostationary satellites, which is what we used to have when we read textbooks in college, to low-orbit satellites, which has become a reality. Companies like Starlink and others now have thousands of low-orbit satellites, which means they can be used for backhaul communication and data connectivity, not just for broadcast. The cabinet has just approved a space policy, Pakistan's first space policy, which will open the door for private players with low-orbit satellites to come in and offer connectivity solutions in Pakistan. I believe there's a lot of domestic demand for that also, but what would really benefit is enterprise. With a $50 per month, 200 MB low-orbit satellite data connectivity, it would transform the way you currently do backhaul for your cellular infrastructure. At this point, you are confined to using microwave links, which are also dedicated because we didn't have spectrum sharing. With spectrum sharing, you can share those microwave links to connect your backhaul towers, but also with a low-orbit satellite connectivity, inshallah ta'ala, you would also get low-cost backhaul through low latency, low-orbit satellite technology. That should also happen, I'm expecting sometime in March. The first private player would enter the Pakistan market because of this new space policy that we've done, and you'll get to connect your cellular towers, not by laying fiber, which would take some time, but also using low-orbit satellite backhaul, which goes into play, hopefully, in March. We are hoping you'll get another additional 300 megahertz as the telecom industry starting July and August, and I do hope that the telecom industry wholeheartedly participates in the auction that we're going to do. I've already told you that we are very aware and sensitized to how we price this, how this is rolled out, and we need to take a longer-term view of promoting 5G and 4G accessibility in this country and not trying to unlock the value on day one. I think the government is largely aligned around that too. With our low-orbit satellite space policy, you'll get a low-cost backhaul for the cellular towers. And with our national fiberization policy, you will get facilitation to now lay fiber from 164,000 kilometers to at least 300,000 kilometers in the next year or two to come. We have also mandated USF, the Universal Service Fund, to, instead of funding one-off projects, actually be part of the national fiberization policy. The government needs to invest in shared telecom infrastructure. If you face an issue laying your duct or fiber or being able to lay a fiber for every operator, why can't USF come in and give you a ready-made infrastructure which you can all leverage? That is now being part of their mandate. As you know, USF is sitting on something like 67 billion rupees right now. That's good money that can be plowed in to promote fiberization of the country. And I think that's inshallah going to happen also in months to come. You already know it's not related to you, but the work that has gone in the IT industry has, in the last 60 days, increased their IT exports by 32%. So we have increased our IT exports 32%, or one-third, just in the last 60 days. December was the first month when our IT exports exceeded $300 million. Just going with this run rate and the growth that we've seen, 13% November, 17% December, we should be able to cross $5 billion sometime this year. which is what we wanted to achieve in the first year, and hoping to take this industry to about $10 billion, which I think is the true potential, for the Pakistan IT exports. Sorry, my phone won't stop ringing, but I apologize for this. Yeah, okay. And so that's that. So what I've, before it rings again, just to quickly recap, the last few months have been a bit of a roller coaster ride for this sector, for the IT telecom sector. I think the IT industry has begun to show signs of growth. At this rate, we should be able to touch $5 billion sometime this year, in the coming year. With what we promised to the handset manufacturers but couldn't deliver is going to come through shortly. We're going to, for your capacity of wanting to meet the local demand largely through your 25 million handsets per year, you should now get incentives from the government to also be able to export it with an R&D allowance. Comes in 3% this year, hopefully 8% next year. You'll get a local deletion policy, and you'll get a tariff differential so that it is cheaper to manufacture it here as opposed to import it. The national fiberization policy, the space policy to provide you low-cost backhaul are already in play, and you should be able to benefit from that quickly. The goal is to now have the country fully fiberized, all of our cellular towers connected either through fiber or shared microwave channels because of the active spectrum sharing, or through a low-cost backhaul through low-orbit satellite technology, so that consumers can finally begin to use 4G beyond the few cities where we are all able to enjoy this. And I hope that the handset manufacturing industry lives up to their true potential. India does $10 billion worth of exports of handsets every year. You know, I typically look at India and say we could be at least 1/3 of that size, which means that we should be somewhere around $3 billion in handset exports. With our policies going in and inshallah becoming accessible, this should happen shortly. One final initiative that I just want to touch upon, because it's still not approved by the government, is handset financing. One way to support high-end manufacturing of handsets in Pakistan is to make them affordable for people to buy. And we've put together a policy. We work with PTA, Chairman Saab is here, to come up with a framework within which handsets can be given to consumers on installments. And the policy and the enablement is such that if someone goes delinquent on their installment, their phone can be blocked and then unblocked through the drip system that we have in place. That debate is still ongoing in the government on how to do it, but I think what we are leaning towards is make it such that the locally manufactured handsets at least can be given out on installments. So that's something I think we should be able to, inshallah, achieve within the next 2 weeks, and that policy can then become active and would enable more of this. I don't know if I've missed out on anything, but these are the promises that we made to the IT telecom industry about 4 months ago, between fiberization, low-cost backhaul, connectivity, handset manufacturing, more spectrum that becomes available to the cellular industry, and for them to be able to now bring 5G to Pakistan. So what, inshallah, we are hoping to achieve in the next months to come is for Pakistan to get handset manufacturing and export in Pakistan at a level that's not happened before, for us to be able to do 5G spectrum auction in months to come, for us to be able to fiberize the country at a pace that's not happened before, and for consumers to benefit from both mobile and fixed broadband connectivity. I want to thank all of you for your support. There are many friends and colleagues here who, of course, collaborated with us in the last few months to be able to do this. I want to commend PTA, which has really worked very hard and has taken a very forward-looking, progressive view in enabling and making some of this happen for us. I want to thank the industry and everyone else who's here, who's worked with us over the last few months. And inshallah ta'ala, I think we're going to unlock huge potential of the IT, telecom, and handset manufacturing industry in Pakistan. Thank you.